Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of California wildfires. We've got some really interesting source material for you guys today. It's an excerpt from a podcast script that focuses on California fires. And by the end of this deep dive, hopefully you'll be able to move beyond just the headlines and really understand this whole situation.
Yeah, we're going to go beyond just the surface level and really get into all the causes, all the effects of this, and what we can do to potentially solve this problem. You might be surprised what we find.
Yeah. One of the first things that just blew me away when I was reading the script is that something like 80% of wildfires are caused by humans.
Whoa.
That's a crazy number, 80%. So it's not, it's not just like Mother Nature doing this. It's really us.
Yeah. It really makes you think about our role in all of this.
Yeah, for sure. So to get started, let's talk about a little bit of a background here. California's wildfire history is long and complicated, but it's definitely escalated in recent years. The script talks about the Camp Creek fire of 2023. Oh, yeah.
As like a prime example of this escalation.
That was devastating. Thousands of acres burned. Tens of thousands of people had to evacuate.
Yeah. It's just hard to even imagine the scale of destruction. And it's not just the immediate damage, right?
Right.
We're talking about billions of dollars annually. Like, imagine a small country's entire GDP wiped out every year because of these fires.
Yeah, and that's just the economic cost. There's so much damage environmentally, too, with all the carbon dioxide being released. We'll get into the environmental impact a little bit later, but it's a huge part of this whole story.
Yeah, for sure. So we've seen the devastation, but what's causing these infernos? The script points to four main causes. And it's a mix of both natural and, as we said, human-made. It's like a perfect storm brewing.
Yeah, it really is. The first one is one that's getting harder and harder to ignore, and that's climate change.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about the 2022 heat waves in California as a prime example of this, with the rising temperatures and the prolonged droughts. It creates this like tinderbox. So it's like climate change is setting the stage for these mega fires.
Exactly. It just bakes the moisture out of all the vegetation and makes it so easy to start a fire.
Wow. And then, of course, you've got that 80% that we were talking about, the human element that's causing these fires. Now, human-caused fires can be both accidental and intentional, but can you give us some examples from the source?
Yeah, for sure. On the accidental side, you've got campfires that weren't put out all the way, or cigarettes that are thrown out, even like sparks from machinery can cause this. And then there's something as simple as a car's catalytic converter.
Wow.
If it's really hot, it can ignite dry grass and set off a huge fire.
It's kind of scary how easy it is for these things to get started. What about intentional fires? The script talks about a particularly shocking example.
Yeah, the 2020 El Dorado fire was started by a gender reveal party.
No way.
Yeah, a pyrotechnic device they were using ignited the dry grass, and it spread out of control.
Wow, I never would thought that a gender reveal party could start a wildfire. That's crazy.
It really is. And it highlights the importance of just being aware of your surroundings and what you're doing, especially when you're in a place that's prone to fire.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got climate change making things really dry. Humans are providing the spark, but there's some other factors too, right?
Right.
The script also talks about urban expansion as playing a role. What does that mean?
Well, as more and more people are moving into these areas that border wilderness, the risk of wildfires impacting homes and people is going way up. So we're building in areas that are naturally prone to fire, and that's just making it more dangerous.
Yeah, we're kind of building ourselves into a corner.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have natural causes, right? Even though humans start most of these fires, nature still has a role.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lightning strikes, especially when things are dry, can start massive fires.
Yeah, of course.
And then there's the Santa Ana winds. Those hot, dry winds can turn a small fire into something huge really quickly. So welcome back to the deep dive. We've talked about what causes these California wildfires, but now let's think about the ripple effects. These fires impact a lot more than just California.
Yeah, we've been setting the stage, figuring out what causes this, but now we've got to ask, so what? What does all this mean for you, the listener? Even if you don't live in California, how does this affect you?
Right. We're going to connect the dots and show you how all this fits into a much bigger picture.
Okay, let's start with the environment. We talked about it a little earlier. We think about forests. We think, oh, they're beautiful. But they play a huge role in keeping our planet healthy.
Oh, absolutely. Think of California's forests like these giant sponges. They soak up all the carbon dioxide that's heating up the planet. They absorb tons of CO2 from the air.
So when these forests burn, All that carbon goes back into the atmosphere. That sounds bad.
It is. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. The more forests burn, the more carbon is released, which makes climate change worse, which leads to more fires. It's this crazy cycle.
And it's not just the carbon we should be worried about, right?
No, not at all.
Hmm.
There's all kinds of nasty stuff released into the air when there's a wildfire, like particulate matter, ozone, even toxic chemicals, and all that pollution can travel for miles and miles.
So even if you're far away from California, you could still be breathing in smoke from these fires. That's scary.
Yeah, it shows how connected everything is on our planet. What happens in one place affects everyone.
So we've got the environmental impacts, carbon, air pollution, but what about our health? I know wildfire smoke is bad for you, but how bad is it, really?
It's really bad. Wildfire smoke is full of these tiny particles, gases, and chemicals that can get deep into your lungs. It can cause all sorts of breathing problems, asthma attacks, bronchitis, even heart problems.
So even when the fire's out, the danger isn't really over.
Nope, not at all. The smoke can stick around long after the fire's gone. And like we said before, kids, older folks, and people with breathing problems are at a higher risk.
It's like this invisible threat that hangs around. And then there's the mental and emotional toll too, right? I mean, going through a wildfire, the fear of losing your home, that's got to be tough.
Oh, absolutely. The emotional impact of these wildfires is huge. People are dealing with stress, anxiety, even PTSD. It can take years to recover.
And we can't forget the social and economic impacts. We've already talked about the billions of dollars in damage, but it goes beyond that.
It does. Businesses get destroyed, people lose their jobs, and rebuilding is so expensive. And sadly, low-income communities and communities of color often get hit the hardest.
That's a really important point. It's not just about the damage to buildings, it's about the social and economic inequalities that get worse because of these disasters.
Exactly. These communities often don't have the resources to prepare for or recover from wildfires. It really shows how climate change and environmental disasters don't affect everyone equally.
Okay, so we've talked about the causes and the consequences. This is clearly a big problem with a lot of different sides to it. But the question everyone's probably thinking is, what can we do about it? Is there any hope? Can we make these California wildfires less frequent and less destructive?
There is hope, but it requires a big change in how we think about wildfires. We need to move from just reacting to them to actually preventing them, from fighting fires to managing the landscape so that fires are less likely to happen in the first place.
Okay, I like that. How do we do that? What does a more preventative approach look like?
Well, for starters, we need to rethink our relationship with fire. It's not just this destructive force. It's a natural part of healthy ecosystems.
That's a pretty different way of looking at things.
It is, but it's important if we want to find solutions that work in the long run. We can learn a lot from indigenous communities who have been managing fire for centuries. They use controlled burns to clear out underbrush and create healthier forests that are more resilient to wildfires.
So it's about working with nature, not against it.
Exactly. We need to do things like thinning out dense forests, removing dead trees, and creating fuel breaks. This makes it harder for wildfires to spread.
It sounds like a lot of work, but it's important work. What about technology? Can technology help us manage these fires?
Absolutely. We're seeing amazing advancements in how we detect and fight fires. We're also getting better at predicting how fires will behave. Satellites, drones, computer modeling these are giving us new tools to understand and respond to wildfires.
Yeah, it seems like we're entering a whole new era of wildfire management. Like we're combining technology with this ancient wisdom.
It really is amazing. And it's not just about gadgets and old ways of doing things. We also need better policies and more money for research. But maybe the most important thing is a change in how we think about this whole problem.
When you say a change in how we think, what do you mean?
We need to stop thinking that we can only react to wildfires. Like we see a fire, then we put it out. We got to be more proactive. We got to focus on preventing fires, being prepared, and building communities that can bounce back.
So it's kind of like wildfires are going to happen in California. That's just a fact. So we need to design our communities and our lives to be ready for that. What would that actually look like?
Well, think about communities where the houses are built with fire-resistant materials, where there's space around neighborhoods to stop fires from spreading, and where we have systems that warn people early so they can evacuate.
So we're talking about a culture of preparedness, where everyone's working together to stay safe. That sounds huge, but really important.
It is. And remember, wildfires aren't just a California problem. They're happening all over the world. It's a global issue. So the solutions we come up with here can be used in other places too.
Okay, let's talk about what individuals can do to protect themselves and their families. Especially if they live in an area where wildfires are a risk. What are some essential things they can do?
First things first, have an evacuation plan. You got to know where to go, what to take, and make sure everyone in your family knows what to do. Pack a go bag with things like medicines, important papers, some clothes. Be ready.
So it's about being prepared, not panicking when something happens.
Exactly. And don't wait until there's a fire to figure this stuff out. Do it now. Learn the evacuation routes, sign up for alerts, and practice your plan with your family.
Okay, what about staying informed? How can people keep up with what's going on with wildfires?
Technology is super helpful for that. Download apps like CAL FIRE to get alerts. Watch the news, check the weather, and stay connected with your community.
So basically, know what's happening around you, stay in the loop.
Yep, and remember, your home is your first line of defense. Create a defensible space around your house. Clear away dry brush, trim trees, and use plants that are fire resistant. Clean your gutters and don't keep flammable stuff near your house. Those little things make a difference.
Thinking back to that 80% of wildfires being caused by humans, it really makes you realize that we each have a responsibility to prevent fires.
It's so true. We need to be careful, especially during fire season. Putting out campfires completely, being careful with machinery, even avoiding things that could cause a spark on a dry day. Those things can save lives and property.
So it's not just about being prepared for a fire, it's about making sure fires don't start in the first place.
Exactly. And beyond what individuals can do, we need to support policies that help manage forests, invest in renewable energy, and fight climate change. Those are the big solutions that will help us in the long run.
It's about recognizing that this isn't just a local problem, it's a global one. Okay, we've covered a lot today. We talked about the causes, the consequences, and what we can do about these California wildfires. What are some key things you want our listeners to take away from this?
Well, I hope they have a better understanding of what causes these fires and how they affect everyone, not just people in California. But most importantly, I hope they feel like they can actually do something about it, that they can be part of the solution.
It's about taking action, being informed, and working together to create a safer future. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into California wildfires.
It's been great talking to you all. Remember, knowledge is power. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.